In this video, I'm going to be teaching you about how to build websites with Claude Cowork, and these are going to be about simple HTML sites. So if you're interested in beginning to build websites with HTML and also with Claude Cowork, which is pretty simple to do. All right, so I wanted to start out with talking about what a website is, especially something as simple as an HTML site. HTML sites, they only have some basic functionality, like they have stuff that you can click on, which is different from something that's more advanced. There's different stuff that could be done like on the back end, like when you have websites that you can like upload attachments to and things like that, stuff that can stream video. Obviously those are a little bit more complicated than these simple sites, but I figured this is a good way to start for somebody that is just beginning to use Claude Chat, Claude Cowork, or even Claude Code. So this would be something that they would probably be interested in. This is kind of how I started out. I started experimenting with stuff and building these sites. And right here, it tells you about that. There's really not much to it. All that a site is HTML and CSS and Java. JavaScript is what basically lets you interact with it. The CSS is more like the wrapping of it, kind of like the clothing, to make it look good, like with the colors and the styling. And then the HTML is like the basic layout, like the sections and things like that. And obviously you don't have to have any kind of coding knowledge. You could just type in natural language. And as you go along with Claude Code, you're going to learn that the better you prompt it, the better it's going to be as far as getting stuff done, because you're going to use less tokens and you're going to get more done. And this is what I just mentioned here. So the HTML is basically the skeleton, the CSS is the clothing, and then the JavaScript is what actually gives it the movement, because without any of these, and if it was just a basic HTML site, you couldn't interact with it at all. It would just be something that you could look at. And it's basically 5 steps when it comes to telling Claude Cowork or Claude Code or even Claude. I prefer to build the simple stuff. I prefer to use Claude Cowork. To build the more advanced stuff, then I would recommend something like Claude Code or some of the other coding tools that are out there. So what you would do is you would start out with describing what you want in plain English, just lay it out, and I'll show you a couple of prompts. And by the way, I'll link these slides in the description, and I also have an HTML version of this that's a little bit different. It's one that you can click on, and it has a pretty long prompt in it that you could use for to get you started. So then Claude will build it, and then you can open the HTML file in a browser. And if it's local to your PC, nobody's going to see it but you. You can also host it, but most people would want to, if they're just starting out, they probably just want to see what it is, so they'll just have it on their own PC or their own laptop. You can go through it like a normal web page. You can see what's going on with it, and then you can ask for changes as you see different things that you want to add to it, or stuff that you may even want to take away or edit. Then you would just put that in another prompt, and you would just put that in there and as natural language, and Claude will go through it and it will figure it out and see, and also depends on the model that you use. If you use the most advanced model, it's going to use up more tokens. So I like to use the medium model, which is pretty good. It gives me a pretty good amount, and I just have the pro plan. So, and because of that, I might end up, depending on how much I use it, I might end up going with the higher plan, which I believe is the max plan, which is like $100 a month. Right here are just some things that you could try out, different types of templates. And also too, again, you could use Claude as like a tool to find out all the different types of pages that you can come up with. I mean, you can just prompt it to give you ideas on building, HTML websites or just websites in general. Right here, you can do a landing page as a business, a personal portfolio, a resume, an event page, a link in bio page, which is kind of like a link tree. And then also you can do explainer page. Explainer page would be like something that you could scroll through and show somebody how you do something step by step. And in the beginning, just regular HTML, like I mentioned earlier, just kind of looks like this before the CSS. And then once you get back to the, get to the CSS, it'll look like this, which looks, in my opinion, looks a heck of a lot better. And I would agree most people, would probably say the same thing. So here are some of the boundaries. HTML sites are more like basic, kind of like beginner level for anybody that's trying this. And as you can see right here, they've got the displayed structure content. They work offline. You can share them with people by just emailing them the file, or you could host it if you like. You could update them. Obviously, it's basically kind of like a prototype, and they look fine on on desktop and mobile. But if you see the second set here, shows you that it's not going to be as good as something that has all these other features. So like collecting form submissions, user logins, accepting payments, live data like news and weather, like I said before, streaming video and stuff like that. Stores, those are going to be the websites that are more powerful that you would probably use something like Claude Code to build, because there's a lot more going on those websites. And also there's more storage involved, so you're going to have like a database and things like that. Right here are some of the common mistakes that people make. Being too vague, name the business and the sections and the goal is something you would do instead of just saying, make me a website. Something like number 5, thinking it's already online. You're just sharing the link with somebody. Obviously, they're not going to be able to see it because it's on your PC. So you would have to either email them the file or you would have to host it. And then, a couple of the things like, add a login or a dashboard. It's not going to be able to do that, because it's just a static HTML page. So there's only so much that can be done with it. Here is a pretty good starter prompt, I would say. It gives it a role and a task, and the framework is pretty important for this stuff. And you'll see I'll show you the other one that I have. It's another version of this. Is an HTML site that I can click and show you. It's got a pretty long prompt, and that prompt is just another version of this, but just with a lot more framework in it. So it's just more precise, basically. But you could use this. Again, I'll link this in the description of the video, so anybody can download it for free and try it out. Look at it, mess around with it on their own. Here's some of the terms for HTML. These are just basic terms for HTML. It's the structure of the page, that, like I said, the headings, the paragraphs, the images, links, and the skeleton. The CSS is like the styling layer. It's like the clothing, basically. The link is the link in your browser that pops up. If it's local, it's just going to have your, either your IP address, or it's just going to say like file / whatever the drive is, C or D. You don't need a server for it, obviously, because it's local to your desktop. It's also going to be in a single file. You could also add other pages. You can use stuff like Claude Code to connect other, files to it, like another HTML site. If you want it as like a second page, and it'll link it in the first page. So, that's just more that you can do with it if you choose to do that. And it's also got, a pretty responsive design as far as you being able to interact with it and things like that, because of the JavaScript. So once you're ready to build it, you're going to have to go into Cowork and put in the prompt. And, like it says here on the screen, you're describing what you want. And then Claude is going to handle the rest. And right here are just some of the, the examples that you can use when you're actually creating the site itself. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you live, what Claude Cowork can do as far as when you put in the prompt, and how it can build the site for you and how you can update it yourself. I'm going to choose, either one of these, or I'll come up with one on my own as an example type of page to build. So I will see you in a second. So here I am at Claude Cowork. I'm going to go ahead and invoke a couple of skills. Actually, what I'm going to do is in the future, I'm going to make some videos about some of these skills to show you how to install them and to talk about the different skills that Claude Cowork has. They're pretty good, I would say. I'm going to try one first called Caveman. It lets you save tokens. I'm going to go ahead and invoke that one. And then once it comes up and it invokes it, I'm going to set it as the ultra level, because there's a couple of different levels of Caveman. So I'll just do it again, Caveman, and then I'll do ultra. Here we go. So once it turns that on, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and paste the prompt in. This is a prompt that's going to be linked for you guys in an HTML version of those slides that I was talking about earlier. So it doesn't, it's kind of weird looking here, but you can kind of see, the framework. It gives you the framework. And actually, what I'll do is, just to make it a little bit better, I'll go ahead and I'll delete it out, and I'll just recopy it, and I'll paste it in, so it'll look a bit better. Because this is actually the title here, I do the roles and everything. I'm going to leave it as photography business and go ahead and send it off. I just use Sonnet 4.6, which is like the most well-balanced model at the moment. And what it's going to do is it's going to start thinking that it's going to ask me some questions, because it's built into the prompt here. So one question, and obviously you see the way it asked this is because the Caveman ultra mode is on, so it kind of like says right here, full level, talk to us now, technical stay exact, fluff die, max compression on. So it's like really, it's talking like really short, so it uses less tokens. So what I'll do for name is I'll put name as, Jim's photo, photo works. I'll just call it works like that. Email, I'm just going to use like a fake email, jim@photoworks.com. And then what I'll do is for the Instagram handle, I'll just put at Jim Photo, just for the heck of it. I'm waiting to see also if it's going to ask the color. It may or may not. Sometimes it'll ask you the color. Sometimes you can state it in there. Again, with prompting, you can kind of, you can be really, exact in editing it with what you want to do before you prompt it. And you can see right here, it's giving you the plan to approve before the build. It's giving you the nav section, hero section, gallery, services, about, contact, footer, style near black. I'm just going to leave it as it is. I mean, you can change this. You can say, yeah, I want the style to be, I want the accent color to be light blue or light orange or dark red or whatever you want. So I'll just put approve. Yes. And then I'll go ahead and wait for it to start building it. And I will be back once it is finished. Okay, these are the results. It gives the explainer section about the different sections of the website itself. It tells you suggestions. So these suggestions here, and this is where you click to view it. The suggestions basically say you should use real photos. You should use an HTML form so someone can, interact with the page, like put in their email. So what I'll do is, just to show the basic page, I'll show you it right here. So view gallery, get in touch. There's a little menu here. So if I click gallery, it brings me down to, these are just like placeholders kind of. So what I'm going to try to do is I'll try to have it edit the HTML and put in, just test photos here just to see like how it looks. Again, this is something that you can edit and you can keep going and mess around with yourself to keep adding features to, just, over and over as you go on. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add a folder, these test photos here, and I'll click select. So, and then what I'll do, actually, what I'm going to do instead, I'll just go ahead and just add the files themselves, and I'll hit open. And then what I'll say is, please add these corresponding photos to the gallery section. And then once I send that off, it should update it and put the photos in. So I'm just going to finish this prompt here. Please add these corresponding photos to the gallery section. I'm going to go ahead and send this off, and I will be back once it has finished. All right, so this is what it came up with. As you can see, it basically tells you these files right here, these picture files, have to be saved in the same folder that the HTML file is in. I'll click it, and it's only showing one of the photos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save the names of the photos to this and refresh the page and see if that fixes it. All right, just to show you real quick what I did on the screen here, I went in and I renamed these files like it said, and it's in the same folder, test photos, that I had it in as the actual HTML file. So what happens is when you click gallery, now it shows all the photos. And what I did was I took the name, I saw the name of the placeholder, and I just found them online, just random photos. So, this is a basic site. As you can see here, it's giving like these portrait session, event coverage, product photography. So it's kind of giving like the services. It created the about page. Again, you can edit this how you want. It's clickable here. And, because this is a basic site, there's not really much, that it does. And just as an example, I'll go ahead and show you, this is the HTML version, the site version of the slides from earlier. Concept, it's clickable here. All this is clickable. So like, this is what I talked about earlier. Gives you, this one even has like a glossary section, so you can see the different the words that have to do with HTML, the different definitions. It gives you the tips here, the mistakes, gives you the before and after. And then this is the prompt. This is the longer prompt you can copy. And down here it gives you the examples you can use. All you do is hit copy. So as an example, something slightly more advanced, I built this automation engine. So what you would do is you would put in your Anthropic key here, your API key, and it's just stored locally. And you can select the different models here. You can generate ideas. You'd put in something like what you want to automate, and you can generate up to 50 of them, and then you can actually export them if you want to. Here's another one. This was 100 web app ideas to build. I'm gonna put a lot of this stuff into my school community. It's clickable here. You can click just here. It shows you all the beginner. Here shows you all the intermediate, and here shows you the advanced. If you click on it. And the cool thing is that I actually added in this little functionality where if you click it, it's collapsible, and it gives like a little description here of each one. So it tells you basically what you would do to create the automation. And you can search it here. I actually have some other ones here. I'm going to show another one real quick here if I can find it under here. And I also did one that's a content repurposer. See if it pops up. It's linked to a prompt library. I also have this in my school, so I had it as I got to fix it. I used to have it linked here, the other one that I just showed. But this is pretty cool because it's got a whole bunch of different prompts, and it's also collapsible here. That's a slight bug. So like you see, like when you click the arrow here, this one shows up blank. You click it and it shows up. So, you'd get it, you'd copy the prompt and you could use it. It's got the variables that you would have to fill in. And there's a ton of these things in here that I added. So let me back up. This one's pretty cool. You can just either use an open API key, OpenAI API key, sorry, and your Claude key here. You can clear it out. You can block it here from being viewed. You can choose the different models right here on each one, OpenAI, these 3 different ones. You can either paste in content. You can put the brand, voice, target audience. This is just basic stuff. This has been done before, on plenty of other sites, I'm sure. You can upload the content or you can just paste it here. And then you would just generate one of these, and then you can also export it. It'll pop up here. You can export it as a PDF, a document, or as some slides if you wanted to. So, hopefully this gives you an idea of what you could do with, Claude, what you could do with the Cowork, these different things, what you could build with these sites, and obviously you could use Claude Code, like I mentioned, to build even more sites. So keep a lookout for the future. I'm going to be creating some more videos on all this stuff as I get a chance. So if you want, you could comment something, comment whether you liked it or not, comment, your ideas, something that you may be working on. I'll put all the links in the description, including the school community that I'm starting up. And that's about it for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.